want to raise tough, gritty kids who are resilient. And I'm going to give you some tips and some tools here today, because that is what we need. That's what our families need. That's what our society needs. And grit and resilience is what every kid needs, and so many modern kids do not have. So I'm going to teach you some tools how to raise gritty, resilient kids, and why you should never, ever call your kids smart. Now, sometimes what happens is that the world changes, and it changes dramatically, and we don't even realize it's changing. And 10 years ago, the world changed, and you probably didn't even realize it. Just like I've been telling my family 3 days ago, I think the world changed completely, and we don't even really realize it yet. Because three days ago, I learned about these two things. One, I learned about not that far from where I used to live, and not that far from here, at this laboratory called Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. These crazy genius scientists did this thing with energy and fusion, and they were able to create more energy than they actually started with, and it's probably going to change the world. You probably saw this in the news. Also, what I learned about 3 days ago is that there's this crazy new AI that is accessible to all of us, and it's called ChatGPT, and it's just like this incredible website which is free, and you can go in there, and it's super smart, and it does like crazy stuff, and it answers your questions, and it writes things for you. And that's not what this is about. This is not the technology club. This is the parents club. But it's like these things are definitely probably going to change the world. Well, about 10 or so years ago, this super smart woman out of Stanford named Angela Duckworth changed the world. She wrote a book called Grit. Now, you might have heard of the book or heard of her, or you might have even heard of some of the teachings that came out of the book. So some of the teachings that came out of that book are this concept kind of growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Now, I'd love to teach you more about that, and I'll give you a couple things here about it today. But essentially, schools all around the country and then all around the world have adopted this psychology and the teachings that have come out of this book, and it really has changed the world. Like every teacher nowadays has gone through training and understanding the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and how important that is to all of our kids, and like the difference of it, the symptoms of it, and how all teachers and really all parents should be using these tools to try to raise kids with a growth mindset, with grit and resilience. So here's a couple tips and tools for you. So Angela asked herself, okay, so here I'm the super smart psychologist, doctor lady person, and how do people grow? How do kids learn in school? So, okay, is it because they have an innate talent? Like they're just really talented kids? Or is it because of their intelligence? So I was like, maybe it's one of this, maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 70-30. I got to figure this out. And so she's got to figure out, okay, so while she's doing all this fancy research and stuff, she started learning about this growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And she saw that the successful kids it wasn't because of their talent, and it wasn't because of their just natural talent or their intelligence. Is that these kids had something that the other kids didn't have, and she ended up calling this a growth mindset. Now, this opening teaching is not about a growth mindset, the details of it, or a fix. That's for a different class. But essentially, the growth mindset is this. Some of the characteristics, like I'm not afraid of failure. I'm not afraid of looking dumb. I understand that learning and becoming good at something, it takes time. It takes effort. And a fixed mindset is like, look, I'm afraid of looking dumb. I don't like to look stupid. It's embarrassing. And I'm kind of set at where I'm at. And I don't really want to push myself farther than that because it's just too hard and it's just too awkward. And so some of the characteristics she determined is that with kids that have grit, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to build grit in your kids, they have these two things. One is they have perseverance, which is kind of like this resilience, like I'm not giving up. Now your kids already have a ton of grit in their lives. They already have it. Now, do they use that grit for good or for other things? Well, I'll let you be the determination, you be the judge. But this resilience, like I'm not gonna give up, I'm gonna keep pushing through. And then the second thing that they have, and we wanna build in our kids, is this passion, is what she called it. Passion, which means direction. Like I can see the goal here and I'm passionate about it. Like I'm fired up. These are like my goals. I wanna get to that spot. See, the problem with so many kids is that they have so much grit today, but they have grit for like a video game. they want to like really get good at this game. They want to get a better record. They want to beat their friends. Or they have grit for like a Snapchat streak, right? It's like, I gotta keep going. I really want to get this done. They have this direction into foolish things, right? They're just wasting their time and not really helping them to grow or improve or to be a better human or to really move into a good direction. And so what Angela concluded is it wasn't the smart kids who are successful. It's not. It's not the smart adults either. It's not the talented ones either. This is really good news for all of us, especially us dummies like me that never really did well in anything really. Well, why is it then? How are the kids that are successful, and this actually all goes for relationships too. I'm another example of that. So, okay, I wasn't naturally good at relationships. I wasn't naturally good at school. I wasn't naturally good at anything. So it's not the kids who are talented or the smart ones. It's the kids who have grit. So what do we do about it? Okay, so here's some tips that we learned from Angela and a whole bunch of things because I've been studying grit for a long time. First is your interest. Like, what interests you? What fires you up? Because that is the clue, right, of where to go. Sometimes people, not sometimes, all the time, over 24 years of working with your sons and daughters, what do I want to do with my life? I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to study. I don't know what I'm going to major in. I don't know what I should do. And I say, well, what fires you up? What do you get excited about? What gets your imagination? That's where you should start. Sometimes you can say, well, I don't know what God's plan is for me. Or I don't know, I'm praying, I'm meditating, I want to go. What does your heart call out to you? Like, what makes you feel pumped up in life? And so what she found is that more extracurricular activities. So yes, old school stuff. We're talking sports, piano. We're talking Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, church. We're talking horseback riding, lacrosse. We're talking extracurricular things where our kids are getting out there and there's adventure and there's drama class. Because if you look at all those things I just listed, they're all things like you are not good at. Like you're not perfect in. There's always somebody better than you. There's always a better team. You always have a coach who's pushing you. And see how it just naturally builds that grit and that growth mindset. This is why one of the ways I help kids who with school refusal or academic stress or even self-deprecation is that I help them see that they already have all this grit. And you can do this with your kids. They already have it. They have it so much in their life. And then just channel that grit into these other areas. Now, it could be hard because it's a lot harder to push yourself in this activity versus pushing yourself while you're playing a video game or, pushing yourself in this activity versus while you're playing volleyball or, doing something that's more pleasurable, that has greater emotional consequences, right? Like, hit that dopamine. But here's another tip I learned. Now, this is something that Angela doesn't focus on, but a lot of other people focus on it. And I practice this in my home as well, even though, is that you never want to ever want to call your kids smart. Now, I am not going to go into and try to defend this. There's a lot of research on this. You just go to this little tiny website called Google and check it out. But essentially what happens is that the kids that believe that they're smart or have been told that they're smart, they then are more prone to develop a fixed mindset. Because then what happens is little Johnny, little Angelina has been told that she's smart. And then now she goes and she's in the 3rd grade and she's really struggling with a new class or a new activity. And it's hard for her. But she says she's smart. I'm smart. I should be getting this. So what happens then? She gets frustrated and she gets really emotional because she thinks it just could come natural because 1st and 2nd grade came natural to her. So then she's just more and more negative emotions are building up. So what does she do? Well, she says, I don't want to do this. It's just too hard. I want to quit. I don't want to do this. This is actually a real life story of a friend of ours. And she came to me and she said, what do I do? This is what my daughter's saying. And she literally was talking just like this. And I said, and I kind of like was coaching her. One of the things that I heard the mother was saying is, yeah, she's so smart. I tell her all the time she's smart. And I'm like, okay. So for me personally, I've been working with young people for 24 years. And all the thousands and thousands and thousands of young people I've ever met in my life, I've actually only met one smart one. Only one smart kid. where I'm looking at this teenager and I'm like, dude, this kid is freaking smart. Like, smart. So essentially my theory, and there's research that backs this up, is that there actually are no smart kids and there's no smart teenagers. They do not exist. Maybe there probably are some out there. I just have only met one. That one kid has ended up being a Hollywood star, and he's been on Saturday Night Live for 10 years. His name's Kyle Mooney. And I mentored him and his other pretty smart best friend, his name's Dave, and they both did a YouTube channel. Then they got hired by Saturday Night Live, which they were on for like 8 years. And then Dave is now married to this Hollywood actress called Emma Stone. And then Kyle is just like, he's just retired from Saturday Night Live and he's moving on. But when Kyle was like a high school kid, I mean, the dude was so freaking funny. Like, so funny. Like, wicked funny. Like, he was like so hilarious. And I was mentoring him. We would take him on these youth group trips and these outings. And like, it was hilarious. And I was actually doing stand-up comedy at the time. And so they were like, we were like doing these bits together and they were like this. And I was like, no, like this, he's just way smarter than me. He's way funnier. So yes, you might have met a super smart or naturally talented, but still the reason why Kyle and Dave became so successful is not because of their humor. There's probably a lot of hilarious teenagers out there right now. These guys went off to USC film school. They got on this little tiny website at the time called YouTube, and they started making these edgy videos, which can be found what are called good neighbor videos, and they became kind of quasi-famous on this up-and-coming website. It's a hard work. Like, they just not just fall into fame. They work their butts off, so good for them. And so here's how you can how this can translate into your parenting. So when you're, instead of saying you're smart to your kids, you can say this in your own way. This is going to come off a little edgy. So you may not want to say it this way. You could just say, yeah, like, I don't know of any smart kids. I don't think you're exceptionally smart. I'm not really that smart. Like, no offense. It's just like the way you get smart at something. And again, this is just one of 100 ways you could say it. I'm not advising you to talk to your kids this way. I wouldn't talk to my kids this way. It's just like trying to get to the point, right? It's like the way you get smart at something, be it hard work, right? You have to learn. Like, algebra is really hard. And if you want to become really good at algebra or math, well, it's going to take time. It's going to take hard work. Like, it's not just going to come naturally. And so, yeah, let's say the friend's daughter, you say, yeah, I know it's really hard. I know. I know it's, I'm not surprised that you want to quit in this assignment or this. I don't blame you. See, that empathy. Makes sense that you want to give up. Yeah. What are you going to do in life? Because life's hard. And I'm not going to be good at stuff. I'm not good at most of the things that I do. There's only a few things I'm good at. I'm not very good at this thing. So I would want to quit too. But this is where life, we get to decide. And this is where we want to be. Are we going to give up? Are we going to push through and like say, hey, this is hard for me. This isn't my best subject, but I'm going to push through because that's what I do. And that's what we do in this family. We don't give up even when things are really hard. Here's another tip for you is if somebody does want to quit, you can say, hey, yes, you're allowed to quit, but we're not going to quit today. We don't quit on a bad day. If you really want to quit this sport or this thing, we can definitely talk about quitting. If you want to quit before the season's over, we can definitely talk about it. I don't want you to feel forced that you're like, have to commit your life to something that is just driving you nuts and making you so unhappy, 3 months at finishing a job that you don't like for an adult is not a big deal. But 3 months for a child who's committed to something because they signed up for some sport that they hate, yeah, maybe you should make them finish out the season and maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. It's just like, it's sports. It's not like you go in, we have these speeches about how sports is about commitment, which it does produce, we know this from research, produce commitment and does produce grit. But it's okay to let your kids quit sometimes. It doesn't mean you're raising a quitter, right? But this is a tip to say, hey, you're allowed to quit, but we don't quit on a bad day. Let's talk about when would be a good time to quit. Here's another tip for you on raising grit would be, yes, you're allowed to quit, but we need to work together to find something else. What do you mean? Well, if you're not going to do this, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know. I just want to do nothing. And we'll say, well, I don't know if I want you to do nothing. Well, what do you mean? Well, I want us to work together. Can we work out a deal, a win-win? What do you mean? I just want to quit. Well, I don't want you to feel like I'm controlling you or forcing you, but for me, I want you to stay involved in doing something else. And I'm not talking about like year-round sports or whatever here, which I don't even believe in year-round sports. Just talking about just a tool about how we help them like transition from one thing to another without like developing this quitting mentality, because well, I have anxiety and depression, so I want to quit everything. And this is where screens is just really not producing gritty kids. I mean, we cannot underestimate the dangers and the power and the horrible toxic results that these stupid screens have had on our kids, and how it is totally skyrocketed quitting and comfort and laziness and dopamine drug addiction, and it's just totally dumped in the tank grit. And then what it has then produced is grit for screen related activities which give dopamine drug-like feedings into the brain. It's hasn't it made parenting so much harder having these screens, but also there's so many good things on the screens. We're on one right now. And so thanks for letting me share that with you. Those tips, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you can use some of those tips. I know some of them are kind of a little edgy or controversial. You've never heard them before. And so one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of daily chores for kids is because chores build grit, they build teamwork, they build love, and they build selflessness. They help kids understand the whole freaking world doesn't revolve around them. And yes, let's say you're rich and you have 5 housekeepers and a butler in your house, and so your kids don't have chores. Hey, you do you. You do you. It's just really hard to raise great kids if you're spoiling them, or you have 5 butlers, or you're babying them, or if you're rescuing them from tough decisions. And here's my last tip. It's something I teach about a lot about in the Parents Club and in Family 180 and all my things. It's when your kids have a problem. Let's say it's a problem they forgot their lunch at school, they forgot their homework, or they don't know what to do, or they have a social situation, or they're having a problem with their sibling, or 1,000 other issues. Instead of you solving the problem for them, instead of you pep talking them, punishing them, instead of you rescuing them or jumping in like the big bossy control freak you are and solving the problem for them, instead use this tool. I call it shared problem solving, and say, I don't know what you should do. What do you think we should do? What do you think you should do? Well, I don't know. Right. Well, I have some ideas, but I don't want to give them to you unless you want them. Because oftentimes you'll realize your kids don't want your dumb ideas, right? And so shut your mouth and let them solve it on their own. And you're going to sit in your own anxiety and your own fears because you want to rescue them and save them. You don't want to see them in pain. And if you do that, well, then you're building, you're making parenting more about you and your fears and what you want. Because if your kid forgets their lunch, well, if you go and rescue them, bring them out of lunch, of course that happens once or twice a year, not a big deal. But if this is happening on a more regular basis, well, then they're becoming used to you rescuing them or solving them. Or, Mom, come talk to my brother. Then you come down with your black and white referee jersey and you're doing some stupid sibling stuff, and that doesn't work. So it's just about how do we wisely build grit, and I hope you enjoyed those tools. Love to hear from you. Tell me your thoughts right now.